Hey, Pastor Rob here. Just wanted to thank you for checking out our messages online and wanted to encourage you. I pray that your soul is nourished through the hearing of the word. But at the same time, the writer of Hebrews is very clear about not giving up meeting together. Don't give up the larger gathering. As a matter of fact, in the book of Acts, the early church made it a point to meet together almost daily even, breaking bread together, encouraging one another, being in communion with one another to build each other up. And that is vitally important to your spiritual walk. So I pray that you enjoy this message, but at the same time, I pray that you find a great church body to be a part of, whether that be here at the bridge or somewhere else, so that you can be built up as well. Thank you, and God bless.
Were you applauding her or me? We need to know. It's important. How we doing? Her. Okay. Thank you. Because she's done, right? No. By the way, another great benefit of the zip line, if it's high enough off the ground, it really helps the participant's prayer life. So it's a very, very spiritual thing. So if we haven't met, my name's Tim, and I'm one of the assistants to the superintendent of the Northwest District of the Wesleyan Church. And in that role, I get to work with 30 plus churches across the states of Iowa and Minnesota, plus I get to coach pastors all the way to Alaska, actually, and that's kind of fun. But I just want to update you on some of the stuff going on in our district, and of course, the Bridge is one of those churches. I was just 2 weeks ago. Of course, you all know about Pastor Eric and One Church. I was just with them and their core team 2 weeks ago. I had the privilege to speak over there. Energetic group. And if you have a chance, well, first of all, if you have a chance to go help. But if you have a chance just to stop by and look at the building, you cannot believe how they're transforming it into a warm and welcoming place. And they're going to launch, like 5 weeks from today, I think, or 6. So that clock is ticking, right? So you're going to want to pray for them. We're also in the spring launching a new church in Ankeny, Iowa. It's called Presence Church. At first, I wasn't hot on that name, but the idea is, they said, we want to communicate that God is close. He's present. Okay, I can live with that. And so we're excited about that. A couple of other things. I don't know if you're familiar with Immigrant Connections. Anybody familiar with that organization? It was actually birthed in a Wesleyan church in Indiana, and it's grown chapters all over America. We have 3 chapters in our 2-state area, 2 in Iowa and 2 in Minnesota and 1 in Iowa. But Immigrant Connection exists to provide low-cost or free legal help to immigrants who are trying to navigate our very difficult immigration process. And so far, in the last couple of years, our Immigrant Connection chapters have helped like over 200 immigrants attain full citizenship. And we're really excited about that. Don't get political on me. The Bible says to welcome the foreigner and the stranger. And we believe that's biblical to help our immigrants with that. Speaking of immigrants, we started a new Hispanic work in Sioux City a number of years ago, 5-6 years ago. And they are just busting at the seams. They're actually adding on to the church. Their sanctuary, maybe, as it exists, maybe would seat 180 people because they've blown out the back walls and all this kind of stuff. I was there a few months ago. I don't know where they put the people, 230 in attendance. And so the most exciting thing is we're looking at that location as a Hispanic ministry training center. And we're planning to bring Hispanic leaders from all over North America to be trained in how to lead a church. Okay, enough of that, but I just wanted to remind you that you're part of something bigger. We're excited about what God is doing in Charles City, but his kingdom is expanding like crazy. So when you hear people say, our culture's not interested in God, don't you believe it? It's not true. I can't remember who, I think it was Mark Twain maybe, who said, he said, reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated. Reports of the death of the church also have been greatly exaggerated. Well, you ready to get into what God has for us? Okay, so we have a holiday here in like 4 days. What is it? Yeah, that was a hard question, wasn't it? How many of you are planning, even as we speak, to overeat? Oh yeah, unapologetically. So Thanksgiving is a really unique holiday. It doesn't exist to celebrate an event, like Independence Day or the birth of some famous person. It exists. It's just a very different holiday. It just rolls around on the calendar to remind us, be grateful, be thankful. I have a theory. And my theory is that most of us struggle with gratitude. And we'll talk about some of the reasons why. But I think Thanksgiving, coming around on the calendar, gives us an excuse to talk about this important quality that the Bible has so much to say about. So Rudyard Kipling was an author, lived in the late 1800s, early 1900s. He wrote books like Captain Courageous and Jungle Book. And even if you haven't read the books, you've probably seen the movie, Jungle Book. Well, he not only became famous, but apparently he became very, very wealthy from his writings. And a reporter came up to him one day and said, Mr. Kipling, I have heard that your writings have made you a lot of money. In fact, somebody figured that you have made about $100 for every word you've written. So the reporter says, Mr. Kipling, he pulled out a $100 bill. Mr. Kipling, give me one of your $100 words. Kipling grabbed the money, shoved it in his pocket, and said, thanks. It's a $100 word. And if thanks is a $100 word, gratitude is a $1,000 word. Because gratitude is what births thanks. See, and we can't just grit our teeth and say, I'm going to be a more thankful person. It's not that simple, because thanks is the action. Gratitude is the attitude. Gratitude is the character quality that we want to talk about. Cicero wrote this, and I wish I had time to talk. There's so many things I wish I had time to talk about today. We're just going to touch on so many things. But Cicero said this, that gratitude is not only the greatest of all virtues, but the parent of all virtues. What do you think about that? Virtues like patience and kindness and humility. Cicero said, gratitude births those things, and I think he may be onto something. Okay, so let's start out by talking about why gratitude is so very, 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 very important. Are you ready? First of all, it's important because it pleases God. It pleases God. The writer of Hebrews says this in verse 28 of chapter 12, since we have a kingdom nothing can destroy, let us please God by serving him with... Yeah, he doesn't say, please God by serving him with a grumpy attitude. Doesn't please God when we serve him and complain because Fred's not pulling his weight and I'm sacrificing more. No, it's the thankful hearts part that pleases God. So I was working on this, a memory came back to me. Dawn and I have 4 sons, and our second son, Mark, just turned 40 this year. And a memory came flooding back. Mark, okay, so back in the day, we didn't have any money. Any of you know what that's like? And so our kids learned to ride bikes on hand-me-down bikes. And when Mark was 5, we scrimped together money to buy him a brand new Huffy bicycle. You remember Huffy? Oh, yeah. Talk your Trek if you want to, but Huffy is where it's at. I don't know if you know this, but wrapping a bike to put under the tree is kind of hard. And so we came up with this scheme. We took the pedals off the bike, We hid the bike in the back of our storage shed, put the pedals in a box, and wrapped them. Mark opened his gift, opened the lid, bike pedals. At first, he had this crestfallen look on his face. But then, I was so proud of him. He was such a good sport. He smiled and he said, "Thank you, Mommy and Daddy. I can use new pedals for my bike." So I said, "Let's go put those on." And so we went down, pulled the brand new red Huffy out of the back of the storage shed. And this was the look on his face. I know it's a little grainy. It's an old photo. I'll never forget that look. And you parents know what I'm talking about. That was 35 years ago. By the way, that really was me, not a gray hair. Being a pastor has done this to me. And I'm very grateful for it. I'm grateful I have hair, actually. That was 35 years ago, but I still remember how gleefully he rode his brand new bike and how very, very grateful and how he just couldn't stop smiling. And that memory still warms my heart. Our Father, too, is pleased by gratitude. Here's a second one. Gratitude, I want you to wrestle with this. Gratitude is an important key to happiness. Now, this is backwards to what we usually think. What we usually think is, if I get everything I want, then I'll be happy, and then I'll be grateful. But in God's economy, gratitude comes first. See? If everything happens just so, then I'll be happy. That's the way most people operate. Like one guy said, listen carefully to this. He said, the way most people approach happiness is this. Happiness depends on my happenings happening to happen in the way I happen to want them to happen. Now, you're all looking at me very, very confused right now. But in other words, that's our approach. I'm going to be happy if everything, that's not real life, people. Carey Nieuwhof, I read a book in which he laid this out, and I just thought this was brilliant. He said the progression of materialism, I want you to remember these three words. The progression of materialism is more, better, different. More, better, different. Okay, first of all, I want more. And then more doesn't satisfy, so I want better. And that doesn't satisfy, so then I want different, something that sets me apart from the crowd. By the way, if you watch Home and Garden TV, you'll see that played out in every show. Just think about it, okay? It's not enough for me to have a nice house. I got to have different. So I have a used car. I want something better. So I get a new car. But pretty soon the new car smell goes away long before the payments go away. Have you noticed? So I want something different. So then I mortgage my future to buy a Tesla Cybertruck. That's different. If you don't know what a Tesla Cybertruck is, you need to Google it. And as I'm driving my Tesla down the road, people are looking at me like I'm some kind of weirdo, because I am. More, better, different. Of course, even if you get everything you want, if you use this approach, your happiness will depend on all the people in your life behaving the way you would like them to. Your spouse, your children, your parents, your coworkers. How's that working for you? Doesn't, does it? So the world's approach is get everything lined out, then I'll be happy, then I'll be grateful. But in God's economy, gratitude comes first, and then it's followed by happiness. I ran across this quote from Harvard Medical School. Gratitude helps people feel more positive emotions, relish good experiences, improve their health, deal with adversity, and build strong relationships. That's old news. It's in the Bible. So, we're going to be camping out at Luke 17 this morning. If you don't have a Bible with you, I looked up the number. Page number in the Pew Bible is 760. I know Pastor Rob likes you to follow along. The book of Luke is the third book of the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke. And in honor of Pastor Rob, if you hit John, you have... Boy, it's sad that you know that. Anyway, Luke 17, beginning at verse 11. Now, on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he's going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." When he saw them, he said, "Go show yourselves to the priest." And as they went, they were cleansed. Now, leprosy, we don't really have it in our part of the world. It still exists in other parts of the world. Leprosy is a horrible disease, slowly eats away at the nerve endings. Often lepers would lose fingers and toes and sometimes ears and noses, and it was somewhat contagious, and so they were required to live in isolation, and if anybody came near them, they were required to call out, "Unclean, unclean," so you'd know, boy, don't go near them. Jesus represented their only hope, and instead of shouting unclean, they shouted something quite different. Have pity on us. And he did. Then he commanded them to go show themselves to the priests. Now, the priest was the one who had the authority to examine them and pronounce them clean so they could re-enter society. And they obeyed. I want you to notice all 10 of them obeyed. And all 10 of them were healed. Now look at what happens next. Whoops, I keep forgetting. I'm used to having the words on the screen. But you know, Rob wants you to look it up. So there you go. One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back, praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him, and he was this is important, he was a what? Samaritan. Jesus asked, were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Was no one found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner? Then he said to him, rise and go, your faith has made you well. Luke takes pains to point out that this thankful guy was a Samaritan. Now, that's important because it was the despised religious outcast who came back and was thankful. It wasn't any of the religious guys. Now, there's a lesson here for us. It wasn't the guys with the good religious upbringing. It wasn't the guys with the good theology. Listen. Some of the most ungrateful people I've known in my life have been church people. Did I just say that? Is that fair? It's true. And we're going to talk about this in a minute, but you can have all your ducks in a row theologically and still live in ingratitude. You can believe all the right stuff. Where are the other 9? Jesus asked. That's a fair question. 10%, 1 out of 10 came back to thank him. But it's pretty typical. We established early on, and you agreed with me, we human beings struggle to remain grateful. We become entitled. Any teachers here? Teachers? How often do you have a student come back and say, thank you? Any moms here? Moms, we've got lots of moms. How many times this week has a child come to you and said, Mom, I just want to thank you that every day you prepare great meals, and every day there are clean clothes in my dresser drawers, and I want you to know I don't take that for granted. So moms, put those hands up high. How many times has that happened this week? What? I'm shocked. Oh, wait. How many times this week have you paused and thanked God for the fact that you're able to draw another breath? See, it's a human ailment. It's a human condition. So let's talk a little bit about why it's hard to be grateful, and then we'll get back into the passage. One is unrealistic expectations. Whoops, I got ahead of myself there. There's something about our day and age especially that conditions us to think that life is supposed to be free of pain and disappointment. Right? You know, I mean, so anytime life is less than perfect, we think we've been ripped off. We live in an entitled day and age. But what did Jesus say? Can anybody fill in this blank? Jesus said, in this world you will have what? Yeah. But yet when trouble comes around, it's like, surprise. No. We live in a sinful and fallen world, and stuff happens. So unrealistic expectations, okay? Another one is our affluence. I've heard that our culture suffers from a disease called affluenza. Not influenza, affluenza. And generally speaking, and I'm painting with broad brushstrokes, but generally speaking, the more we have, the less we appreciate it. I've made numerous trips to Haiti to help build schools there, and I've never seen a more grateful people who have nothing. I was thinking about this 50, 60 years ago. People raised their families in 2-bedroom houses with 1 bathroom and maybe 1 stall garage. Now we have to have 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, 3 stall garage, and we still need to rent a storage unit for our stuff. Are we happier? Now, there's nothing wrong with that. If you have a 5-bedroom, 4-bathroom house, have fun cleaning all your bathrooms. You know, good for you. That's not the issue. The issue is attitude. Okay. Oh, here's another one. Negative companions can mess you up. 1 Corinthians says this, do not be misled, bad company corrupts good character. See, here's the deal. If your closest associates are grateful people, you will tend to be grateful. If your closest associates are complainers, you will tend to become a complainer. Okay, I'm going to depart from my notes momentarily. I want you to raise your hands if you are over the age of 60. The rest of you can tune out. But I'm just telling you that one of the temptations that comes with the so-called golden years is the temptation to become a complainer. It really is. It really is. And then you get in these groups. Well, enough said there. No extra charge for that, old folks. But you probably get involved in conversations, you just need to leave the room and say, I'm not going to be a part of this. Okay? So I don't know, do you hear about these old folks were sitting around, they started complaining about their ailments like we do. One guy said, my neck hurts so bad I can't even turn my head. And another guy said, yeah, he said, my vision, I can't hardly see anything. And they went on like this, and one of them said, well, look on the bright side, at least we can all still drive. Sorry, that wasn't in the notes either. Frequent comparisons is another one. If you're always comparing your circumstances to other people who you think have it better, you're never going to be grateful. You know? And you know what kills us? Social media. I mean, you do you. I'm not saying this is something you should do, but about 3 years ago, I got off social media altogether. I know that's extreme. I get it, and I'm not saying to do that. But the thing is, what do people post on social media? Whether it's Facebook or Instagram, what do they post? They post their highlight reels. You know? And I'm not saying that's wrong, but we look at their highlight reels and we say, oh, their marriage is so much better than mine. Look how happy they look. And we just had this big argument that, oh, their kids have all turned out. Look at that. You know, okay, enough said there. But those are things that we struggle with, and it just saps the gratitude from our lives. All right, let's get back into the scripture. I sometimes find it helpful when I'm trying to define something to first of all rule out what it isn't. And I see a few things in this passage that gratitude isn't, that it's important for us to latch on to. Let's look at verses 12 and 14 again, and I do have that on the screen for you. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, Jesus, Master, have pity on us. When he saw them, he said, go show yourselves to the priests. And as they went, they were cleansed. Now, there are three things I want to pull out of those 2 or 3 short verses. First of all, it's not just recognizing God for who he is, okay? I mean, as Jesus approached, they shouted Jesus, which means what? Savior. And Master, which was a title reserved for somebody in authority. So they maybe weren't in touch with, you know, they maybe didn't have perfect messianic theology, but they recognized this, okay, this guy's something special here. And he's our only hope. Now here, listen, we touched on this already, but you and I can have our theology down pat and still be miserable, unhappy, ungrateful people. We can. I mean, listen, we can believe all the right stuff, but if we don't let it get from our head to our heart. Okay. Next, it isn't recognizing our need of him. Have pity on us, they said. We're needy here, you know. We're not being prideful about this. They didn't hesitate to take their needs to him. Thirdly, it isn't responding in obedience. Now, this is important. I'm impressed by the obedience of all 10 of them. Look at the timeline here. They came to Jesus. They said, Jesus, Master, have pity on us. Jesus looks at them and says, what? Go show yourself to the priest. Had they been healed yet? That's important. No. They were healed as they obeyed. They weren't healed first, see. What I'm trying to point out is these guys did a lot of things right, okay? a lot of things right, but only one was grateful. So let's hone in on this. What is gratitude? It's hard to define, kind of like love. If I define love, you would have a hard time doing that. Gratitude is one of those, but as I look through these verses, I see a few things that helps us. Let's look at verses 15 and 16. One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back, praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him, and he was, there it is again, a Samaritan, in case you didn't get it the first time, okay? First of all, there's recognition of both the gift and the giver, okay? This grateful Samaritan not only recognized he'd been healed, he recognized the source of the healing. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. Now listen, true gratitude isn't limited to being thankful for the blessings that we have. One of the reasons that Thanksgiving has become an overlooked holiday in our society is because we've taken God out of it. You know, and so we have these mealy-mouthed little challenges about being thankful, but nobody ever mentions who to be thankful to. Listen, grateful people throw themselves at the feet of the giver. Grateful people, listen, grateful people want a relationship with the giver. I want to know you, giver. By the way, little sidebar here. If my focus is on the giver, it will get me through the hard times. If my focus is just on the gift, I'm going to struggle. See, I can get through the hard times because I recognize that God, the giver of all good things, is A, too wise to be mistaken, and B, too loving to be unkind. I can trust him. If my focus is on the giver, I'll make it through the tough times. So there's that, there's recognition. Here's the second thing, communication. Gratitude finds a way to express itself. You can't hold it back. So he not only came back, he came back praising, a loud voice. A loud voice. Now listen, okay, so that may not be your style. You might be a little more introverted, but I'm just telling you, if you're grateful, you will find a way to express it. It will have to be expressed somehow. Okay? That's the reason we don't call it Thankfulness Day. Just go be thankful and hold it in. We call it what? Thanks? You know this. Okay. One more. Oh, this is so important. I think another quality of gratitude is humility. You see, you can't be grateful and proud at the same time. You just can't. See, I think it's notable that leper number 10 threw himself at Jesus' feet, a posture of humility, when he realized what God had done for him. The logical response is humility. Now listen. When we realize what God has done for us, and homes, food, material blessings, that's important, that's good. But I'm not just talking about that stuff. I'm talking about forgiveness. If you've accepted Christ as your personal Savior, you're forgiven. When's the last time you really let that soak in? That Jesus paid a debt for you that you could not pay yourself. And you stand before him. The judge dropped his gavel and said, forgiven. You're a child of God, for crying out loud. See, when you recognize those kinds of blessings that we couldn't earn, don't deserve, can never repay, I don't know about you, but I think humble gratitude is the only response that I can have. How about you? So here's a definition, and it's kind of wordy, but it's the best I could do. So fire me. That didn't sound grateful, did it? It's humbly recognizing that I've received blessings I don't deserve, can't earn, could never repay, and communicating thanks. You see, gratitude includes both the attitude and the action. Now, let's wind it down. Concluding observations. First observation is this: Jesus is approachable, no matter my circumstances. Besides the fact that he had an incurable disease, besides the fact that he was unclean, I mean, couldn't they come up with a better word than that? Unclean. You're disgusting. He was a what? Besides that, he was a what? Were you listening? What was he? Samaritan. He was a religious outcast. And there would have been those who would say, it's bad enough that you're a leper, but you're a Samaritan. You don't deserve the grace of God. Well, yeah, but who does, right? So this story tells me, listen, Jesus is passionately interested in you, regardless. And he is approachable. And we have an enemy of our souls that would try to communicate to us otherwise. That you have to clean up first. You have to do this first. And that's a lie. Jesus is what? Approachable. Here's another takeaway I want you to get. Oh, this is important. Oh, we need time to talk about this. We don't have it. But faith and gratitude are inseparably connected. Jesus says something fascinating in verse 19. Rise and go. Your faith has made you well. He does not say your gratitude has made you well. Did you pick up on that? But his faith was expressed through thanksgiving. It wasn't the gratitude that healed him, it was the faith. Now listen to me. I'm going to lay it down here for you. If you are a person of genuine faith, you will also be a grateful person. Okay? You all right? Okay. Doesn't mean you won't have bad days. I get it. You'll be a grateful person. One more. Faith results in wholeness. Oh, I love this. King James Version translates verse 19 like this. Thy faith hath made thee whole. It doesn't use the word well. See? And the Greek word for whole can also be translated saved. So in other words, the leper received physical healing that day, but he received something far better. And let's be honest, any physical healing is temporary, right? Sure it is. Okay? Sure it is. We get 70, 80, maybe 90 years on this planet, and then we experience the ultimate healing if we're children of God. But he was saved from his sins. He was made whole. Jesus touched him that day on a deeper level. Now, here's the thing I want you to get. Jesus will never settle for dealing with your surface problems. And as hard as leprosy was, it's still a surface problem. And when you come to Jesus, and this is why some people don't, he's always going to dig deeper. You know? He's always going to dig deeper. He's never He's never going to settle for, hey, let me deal with your symptoms. Let me make you feel better. He's always going to dig deeper. Okay, so let's take this train into the station here. 2 takeaways. First of all, if you're a child of God, you've accepted Christ as your personal Savior. You are forgiven. You are redeemed. Your name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life. Okay? The only appropriate response for you is to throw yourself before him and express lavish gratitude. Lavish. Now, I'm not going to assume that all of you have decided to accept that free gift of salvation. If you haven't experienced that wholeness that can only come from Jesus, here's your takeaway. I just want you to remember, he's approachable. I just want you to remember he is passionately interested in you. And there's no day as good as today to yield to him. I want to pray for you.